It's interesting because it would benefit them wildly if the next global disease was in fact a coronavirus, seeing as, they already have the platform for the medication. They'll tweak it, same as they try to do with all the new variants, and then boom, they're ready to make a couple more billion bucks. And on top of that, it does set the pretense for digital IDs, the agenda of total control and 24/7 biometric surveillance.
Why? Because in order to open an account, you need to have an ID.
Right.
And I have to say that when I started this job, there were actually very little countries in Africa or Latin America that had one ubiquitous type of ID, and certainly that it was digital, and certainly that it was biometric. And we've really worked with all our partners to actually help that being, to grow this. And the interesting part of it is that, yes, it is very necessary for financial services, but not only.
Sure.
It's also good for school enrollment. It's also good for health, who actually got a vaccination or not. It's very good to actually to get your subsidies, from the government. So this has not only affected financial services, but very important.
So with that being said, I get the feeling it's going to be a mutated form of Nipah virus. Let me explain, because the first time I posted about this, no one really agreed. The second time I posted about it, I had more people who were receptive, I guess you could say. So yeah, my point is, let me know what you think. Anyway, EcoHealth Alliance and Peter Daszak received new contracts for research into this particular disease from the NIH. Fauci has been writing articles and papers on this as well. Oddly enough, it's researching transmission from bats to humans. Yeah, sound familiar? And on top of that, here's an article detailing the research grant into Nipah handed out by the NIH. Now, this is a little bit out of my depth, but from what I gathered, this includes mutating proteins to identify how it would transfer from animal to human. Yeah, does that sound familiar to you? Because it probably should. But that's not all. The organization CEPI has been advocating for the development of a new vaccine. CEPI is funded by the Wellcome Trust, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the World Economic Forum. So, yeah, a lot of stars are aligning here. But there is more. Human trials for this new vaccine just started 2 weeks ago. And I quote, "The first participants in the clinical trial received doses for the vaccine last week. The experimental shot is being developed by the university's Pandemic Science Institute, and it uses the same viral vector technology as the COVID-19 vaccine it successfully developed with pharma giant AstraZeneca." So, that is crazy. AstraZeneca did not successfully develop anything. As far as I know, that was taken off the market. So, on top of that even, Congress has introduced Disease X into their schedule. This is called the Disease X Act, which is pretty tough to say. I dare you to try to say that 3 times fast. So I went in to try to read a little bit about this act, and yeah, there's no summary. So that's pretty... All of this is tied into the pandemic treaty. They are using a disease that is not yet discovered as the reason for signing over national sovereignty. In fact, every single nation has signed on to preliminary agreements with the WHO, handing all directives related to pandemic responses over to them. And they have already taken it upon themselves to use this future quote-unquote hypothetical pandemic as a reason to demand nations sign on to the finalized